Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Atkins. Thank you so much for joining us today for this very important conversation. I'm a board director of New Life Second Chance Outreach Incorporated, an organization that was founded by Walisha Wilson upon her release from prison to address the challenges of accessing employment opportunities for those with records. Our mission at New Life Second Chance Outreach Incorporated is to reduce crime and recidivism by equipping, empowering, and restoring hope to socially and economically disadvantaged individuals affected by a criminal record by helping them with workforce development and job readiness training so that they may be productive, self-sufficient, and law-abiding citizens. For the past 5 years, Walisha has led the request for July to be honored as Reentry Awareness Month for the entire month. And Reentry Awareness Month has been honored throughout the state of Georgia and by the governor. This is one of our Reentry Awareness Month events that we are bringing to the community to educate them on the challenges to reentry and engage them in community conversations on how to resolve and at the very least address these challenges. Every human has worth and deserves dignity. Formerly incarcerated people are 10 times more likely to experience houselessness than the general public and constitute 70% of the unsheltered houseless population, which results in a revolving cycle between homelessness and reincarceration. It is imperative that we not only have this conversation, but that some tangible resolutions and policy changes result from them. And now, just for a little bit of housekeeping, if you are not speaking or answering questions, please remember to keep your phone or other Zoom device on mute. If you are on camera and doing something you think that others do not need to see, please turn your camera off. And finally, if you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat. It will be answered in the order it was received, but only until 4:30, or only at 4:30. And now we will hear from our founder of New Life Second Chance Outreach, Walisha Wilson.
Thank you so very much, Andrea. I appreciate that. Research shows that people who lack stable housing following incarceration face a higher likelihood of rearrest and reincarceration. On the one hand, a stable home can serve as the foundation upon which returning citizens can rebuild our lives, obtain employment, improve our health, and achieve recovery. Unfortunately, too many people leave prison and jails every day without having a stable home to return to. And a lot of people don't know it, but some people are actually refused being released, even though it's past their actual maximum time of being released if they don't have a home to go to. Many people face housing denials based on their criminal records, years or even decades after serving their time, even when our criminal history does not even indicate that we present a substantial risk to people or property. And part of a statement that Secretary HUD Marsha Fudge made says that the president and I believe that everyone deserves a second chance and a stable home from which to rebuild their lives. No person should exit a prison or jail only to wind up on the streets. What I just read to you in part was a small portion of a letter that HUD Secretary Marsha Fudge wrote to public housing authorities, continuums of care and multifamily owners, and HUD grantees in a June 23rd public release statement to discuss HUD's strategic plans to support returning citizens in need of stable housing. Andrea, if you'll drop, thank you. We have actually contacted Secretary Fudge's office and have requested a one-on-one fireside chat on this issue. And we're looking to get a response to have that hopefully sometime by the end of August, between end of August and mid-September. And we will keep you updated on that. And you can always visit our website or our Facebook page website for any of our upcoming events. Now, before we get into some public housing talk, I just wanted to be able to share with you a few of the things that I had to encounter as a formerly incarcerated individual looking for housing. And I wanted to share my screen. Let's see here. Okay. I just wanted you all to be able to see just some of the language that is presented in some of the applications. that really discourages people from the jump when they're looking for places. So right here, I found this on E&E Capital Management, and yes, I love to call people out. If you have a background that does, the question was on the frequently asked page was, if I have a criminal background, does that qualify me for renting your property? Okay, according to them, they said it'll be denied due to the potential harm to our staff and to the neighborhood. This is language that I do not like, because it assumes that because you have a felony conviction, that you're more crazier or violent than anybody else without a record, which is absolutely false. So I eventually called E&E Capital Management and I asked them about it. So what you're saying is, are you not denying people without records of their potential to cause harm to your staff and to the neighborhood? And she completely didn't understand what I was saying. So just the language itself is part of the reason why we are being discriminated when it comes to getting housing, because of this type of thinking that this person has a felony and they're more of a liability, or they're more violent, or the potential to cause harm than anybody else. Here's another one with Home River Group. And if you'll see on the left side, it lists all of their charges. Most of them were property offenses, which you assume, okay, it's property offenses and we're trying to rent property, drug manufacturing and things like that. But on the right-hand side, it speaks of, in the lower bottom of your screen, if you could see, it says, at the top part, it says, landlord will perform a criminal history. Now, the good thing about them is that they said, we will conduct individualized assessments, meaning we might see something in your record, but we're going to take into account how long it was, what the charges were, which makes sense. But then at the bottom, it says, in the instance, I guess, once you've already been approved for housing, if you're declined based on the criteria listed, landlord reserves the right to take adverse action. This may include denial of the application and require to pay a higher security deposit or requirement to obtain a cosigner. Now, that assumes because you have a record, you got to do higher deposits, because again, it's that thought that we're higher liabilities or we need cosigners. This one was another with Brandywine Homes. And of course, they did list their offenses on there. And it was just the fact that 10 years, you know, people are doing good if they stay out a month without recidivating, honestly, or a year. But to tell somebody that you cannot have a felony conviction for 10 years, anything that's within 10 years is absolutely, it was just, it's a way to already go ahead and to keep out people with records. Now, this was one that I found entertaining. This is what's on their website, Progress Residential. Room for all and celebrate fair housing, really. So they say they have room for all. Their homes are available to everyone, regardless of race, color, national origin. They got all the goodies. And then it says, we celebrate fair housing. Our policies ensure that everyone who applies to rent one of our homes is treated fairly and equally. We don't just follow fair housing guidelines, we celebrate them. But then you turn around here on the same website, and I don't know if, let's see, yeah, I can. If you can see that, now this is regarding the income. For your income, you have to have an entire year's worth of rent in your bank during the time of applying. Now, who has a year's worth of rent in their bank? Certainly not anybody that's probably formerly incarcerated, just getting out struggling. Certainly not anybody that's poor, white or black. So I just felt like this was absolutely ridiculous. Then on the same thing, the same people who said they celebrate fair housing, for felony offenses involving crimes against children, sex-related offenses, homicide, kidnapping, and drug sale, manufacturing, distribution, any felonies within the past 10 years are pretty much denied. So when I called them to ask some clarification on some of the charges, the girl was upfront and honest. She said, I'm just saying, we just put that on there. But to be honest, if you have any kind of record, we don't care if it was 100 years ago, you will not be accepted here. No asking of anything as to regarding what the charge was about, what was the issue behind it, nothing. So we just wanted to just kind of show you what these are the applications that set people up, just like on job applications that ask that question, do you have a felony conviction? That are ways to weed out people. Okay, so right now we're going to go ahead and jump right into our panelists. I'm gonna move this thing out y'all way so y'all can see. It's irritating me. Okay, there we go. Sharon Turner, born and raised in Chicago, attended Northern Illinois University and Columbia College of Chicago. Sharon, affectionately known as Shai, is an activist and community organizer and entrepreneur. Shai served in the U.S. Army, honorably discharged before arriving in Atlanta in 1987. Sharon currently serves as the advisory committee chair for SKIP, Save Kids of Incarcerated Parents, Georgia, Inc., and is a Harriet Daughter board member for Women on the Rise, an advocacy policy nonprofit of formerly incarcerated women here in Atlanta. Sharon is also a 2018 graduate of the National Organizing Fellow for the Center for Popular Democracy's Fed Up campaign. Sharon enjoys attending live music venues, cooking, and serving members of marginalized communities. One of her gifts is connecting people to resources and information. Sharon Turner is a game changer, and she's also known as Resource Queen.
Thank you, Melissa.
So, Brendan Spaar is the executive director of Restore Georgia, a nonprofit organization that advocates for people impacted by sexual offense laws in the state of Georgia. Brenda has testified at legislative committee hearings on the topics of registry reform and reentry. He also serves as a board member of the Greater Gwinnett Reentry Alliance and as a justice ambassador with Prison Fellowship Ministries. Each year, Brendan coordinates the statewide Second Chance Month proclamation during the month of April. Dr. Bambi Hayes Brown is the CEO of Georgia Advancing Communities Together, a statewide membership organization of housing and community development housing and community development agencies. She is also the founder and CEO of Hayes Brown Enterprises, LLC, a strategic consultant agency, a registered lobbyist, and she is a Georgia real estate broker. She's a native of rural Georgia and holds a bachelor's in business management, an MBA, a doctor of theology, and a PhD in biblical studies. Wingo Smith is a regional policy analyst at the Southern Poverty Law Center, focusing on economic justice issues in the Deep South. Before coming to Southern Poverty Law Center, Smith represented clients in consumer housing and public benefit cases. In 2015 and 2016, he assisted with the legislative effort to rewrite Georgia's garnishment laws that they were found unconstitutional. In 2019, as lead counsel in a multi-plaintiff case against public welfare agencies in Georgia, he negotiated a statewide consent order to establish procedures for accommodating people with disabilities within the SNAP and Medicaid programs. He holds a law degree from the University of Illinois and a bachelor's degree from Knox College. And we now have Patricia Bennett. After recognizing that formerly incarcerated people were being denied affordable housing, and because she saw the need to seek out, locate, and inspect safe and affordable housing for male and female ex-offenders in an effort to assist them in finding homes that they can call their own, Patricia Bennett founded Empowering Men and Women on the Move for Reentry, an Atlanta area 501c3 housing program that provides housing to men and women who are returning home from the penal system. And last but certainly not least is Brenda Smeeton. She is Georgia Justice Project's legal director who leads the legal representation and policy teams. She has worked on criminal justice reform for over 20 years. She is a graduate of Buckner University and Georgia State University College of Law. She has been at GJP for over 20 years and has played several different roles within the organization before moving to California. As an attorney at GJP, Brenda has represented hundreds of clients who have been denied employment, housing, or benefits as a result of their criminal history. She has provided training around Georgia to people with a criminal history, service providers, attorneys, and judges about the barriers to reentry and criminal records. She has worked with stakeholders to plan and manage expungement summits all over Georgia. She is the co-author of A Guide to Understanding and Correcting Criminal Records in Georgia and was the primary drafter of the 2020 amendment to Georgia's record clearing law. Brenda has filed numerous appeals related to criminal records issues and successfully argued a case challenging the constitutionality of Georgia's expungement law in front of the Georgia Supreme Court. Thank you all so very much for joining us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay. So welcome guests. And again, thank you all for your willingness to engage us in this important conversation. Because Dr. Brown has to leave shortly, we're going to start the conversation with her. And we will only take questions for her before she leaves, if there are any. Dr. Brown, you founded the Georgia Act in 2001 with one mission in mind: to build and support a statewide network and coalition of thriving member organizations and trained professionals engaged in housing and community development, serving families with limited housing choices. How does reentry housing play in the work that Georgia Act does? And how can housing providers on the call get involved and support those returning home from prison?
Good afternoon. Thankfully, glad to be here. I hope that everyone can hear me okay. I am deep in rural Georgia, doing this on the ground work. So it is indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here. And just speak very briefly, and I'll stay on as long as I can, but I know after I finish, I will go have to turn my camera off, but hopefully I can answer some questions that may be in the chat. I am Dr. Bambi Hayes Brown, and I'm the president and CEO of Georgia Advancing Communities Together, also known as Georgia Act. And we are a statewide nonprofit affordable housing and community development membership organization. And our mission is that we build, support, and inform a statewide network of thriving organizations, professionals, and individuals advancing equitable housing and community development. And our vision is for all Georgia families to have safe and decent housing in vibrant neighborhoods. And we do this work in using a four-pronged strategy. And one is Act Connect. We have approximately 75, and I say approximately because our numbers keep growing daily of members, and we convene them together through our annual Housing Day at the Capitol, our membership meeting, our annual Fall Housing Conference, where we do trainings, and those members can get together and network. And through those convenings, a lot of people have done, and organizations have done joint projects together to help house people and advance equitable community development. We also have our Act Advocacy, which is probably our biggest piece, where we advocate for favorable policy on the local, state, and federal level for those with limited housing choices. We also have our Act Capacity, where we have been able to provide some micro grants and technical assistance to our members to aid them in their work. And then our most recent piece in what I'm doing now in rural Georgia is our Act Engagement. So we have done, last year in 2020, we visited 70 counties in South Central, and Middle Georgia. And I must say that we are based in Atlanta, but we are truly a statewide organization. I see Wingo smiling. But and this year, in addition to the voter engagement, we partnered with one of our members out of Waycross, Georgia, called Fresh Communities, on a 3V liberation tour. And V stands for Votes, Vaccines, and Vision. And votes is, of course, voting on voter engagement is 365. And then the vaccines is to inform people on how to get the vaccines if they so choose, to prohibit misinformation that may be out there, but also to look at other healthcare, so that President Biden in his rescue plan did extend the enrollment for the Affordable Care Act through August the 15th. So we have been enrolling people in the Affordable Care Act, and those who are already enrolled can do a life change and lower their premiums. And then we have the vision. that is where we have been going from community to community in these small towns, from as little as 300 people in Sassa, Georgia, all the way up to places like Albany, Buena Vista is today, Columbus is tomorrow. So 42 cities, going into the neighborhoods, talking to people about the American Rescue Plan. And my part is to talk about housing and how local communities and jurisdictions can best utilize those housing funds using the voice of the people. Oftentimes we have our elected officials, they will tell us what they want to do with the money, but we're reversing that. We're telling them what we would like to see done in the communities. So we have been engaged in town hall meetings and getting people out to strategize and unify and take that message to their local officials, their city governments, county governments, and their school boards. And in addition to doing that, one of the things that we've done differently than most people, we don't wait for people to come to us or to come to City Hall. We're physically going out into the neighborhood. So we're going into public housing complexes. We're going into various community spaces and places. So we're setting up our bus that you see in the background here. We've also partnered with Fort Valley State University, who has a mobile technology trailer where people can come out and actually use computers that is equipped with Wi-Fi. And one of the things that I put in this plug for Fort Valley State University and their mobile technology trailer is they will be working with local communities, helping those who are returning and those who are formerly incarcerated to get those technical training skills on the computer, as well as getting their CDLs, because it is a tractor trailer. And so these are some resources that we've been going in, informing the community, and those resources with Fort Valley State are free. So Ms. Wilson, if you would like to partner with them, I'd be glad to get you their information to help different communities in Georgia. But I said I want to give an overview of what we do in a nutshell, but how can you help? One of the things that I say when I'm going out talking is we help the least, the lost, and the left out. And some people may say, well, I'm not the least. Well, guess what? At some point in time, you've been least. I know I have been lost, and many of our communities and people have been left out, especially our communities of color. And as someone who was formerly homeless and someone who has formerly lived in public housing, I understand those challenges of being left out. And my son, who has a criminal background, has faced those challenges with finding a place to stay because of his prior record. And he had no felonies, but just even a small misdemeanor has been a significant barrier for him to find housing. So he's living in an extended stay hotel. And so these are challenges that are real, that people are experiencing. And what I would like to see, and people to get involved with Georgia Act, as well as our partners, our legal people on this call, is to come up with something like a ban the box, because with something that people have done, may have done 10, 15, 20 years ago. When I was doing property management, I saw somebody who was denied from a felony that was occurred back in the 60s. That's ridiculous. That makes absolutely no sense. And so that's what we need your help in developing a statewide housing platform, as well as on the federal level, to help change these laws and to allow access to those returning citizens. Thank you. Hey, you're on mute, Ms. Wilson.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jones. And I wanted to say that, Dr. Brown, that when you do get ready to have that conversation about that, just also remember that when you get ready to have that conversation, please make sure that formerly incarcerated people are at the table in that conversation. Far too many people are making policies and things that affect people and are not having those folks at the table. And so we have a lot of programs that say we're trying to get affordable housing. You go on their website and we're all about equity and inclusion and affordable housing. But the conversation never is nothing about that for individuals who are directly impacted. I've been homeless, formerly incarcerated, and sometimes when I'm looking for housing, we need to be included as well. So I thank you so much for the work that you're doing throughout the state. And thank you so much. And we understand that you'll probably be off camera for a while, but if you're able to tune in, fine. Thank you so much. So we're gonna go ahead.
Pleasure.
Thank you. We're gonna go ahead and go to the next question. We're gonna go to Wingo. Currently, there is a shortage of 7.2 million affordable rental units available to extremely low-income households. Having a criminal record while competing for these units puts low-income people with criminal records at a severe disadvantage. Each year, over 650,000 people are released from prison, and as many as 1 in 3 people in the US has a criminal record. With so many tenants and so few rental units available to low-income individuals, to low-income households, landlords often use your criminal background check to narrow the applicant pool for their housing. Also, public and supportive housing options are in short supply, and often people re-entering from jails or prison are ineligible or screened out from these programs. What is the Southern Poverty Law Center's role in addressing these types of practices that support housing discrimination or housing instability for those of us with records? Why is it not illegal, since it pretty much eliminates a lot of Black people? And where is the accountability when it goes from discretion to outright denial?
Hey, thanks so much, Alicia. I appreciate that. I can answer a little bit about what we're doing here in Georgia. Primarily our work in Georgia right now as it relates to housing is looking at trying to get a bill passed in future sessions here that would eliminate the use of certain criminal records in landlord decisions, rental decisions. So that would be eliminating, people looking at these super old felonies that people are talking about, like 10 years, 20 years, like eliminating those from the rental decision process. And I think what other people have found when they're looking at this is I should say first, there's no research in Georgia at this point in time. We're hoping to bring some more research to the table about what landlords are doing in a broad sense, and then also like what the what the predictive value of criminal records are in renting. Like what predictive value do they provide if someone's going to be a good tenant or not? Other cities have looked at this before. Specifically, I think that there may be something that was already put into the chat here about criminal records in Minnesota and what predictive value that those had. And they found that for most kinds of crimes, that there was really no predictive value in whether or not a person was going to be a good tenant or not with the people who were participating in that study. And so that's our real goal, is to just shrink the amount of information that people can see. And that's what the current campaign that we're working on in Georgia involves. As far as there are several instances in which the use of criminal records could be illegal under the Fair Housing Act, particularly. Georgia currently has no laws that directly regulate tenant screening processes that tell landlords what they can or cannot do. But there is the Federal Fair Housing Act, and Georgia has its own Fair Housing Act as well, that does regulate that behavior in the sense that you can't discriminate or have policies that, while they don't discriminate on their face, have a disparate impact on people of color or people who may be from different countries or families that have children, and also on disability and a couple of other, and religion. So those laws are in place, and I think that there have been good cases from around the United States that have really targeted practices like that, specifically like zero criminal record sort of policies that say you just can't have any criminal record whatsoever. I'm trying to remember where the last case is from. I don't have it off the top of my head. But that's an example of a practice that would likely violate the Fair Housing Act. HUD put out a statement in and 13, describing that impact that those kind of policies had. And since then, our hope is that landlords have understood that that's the case. There's unfortunately not very many attorneys in Georgia that take fair housing cases outside of our legal aid organizations. That's Atlanta Legal Aid, Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation, and Georgia Legal Services Program. So hopefully we're also going to be able to help build that sort of base of people who are able to take those cases. But for the meanwhile, if people are experiencing those kind of issues, especially here in the metro area, I would contact Metro Fair Housing, who help people through the fair housing complaint process with HUD. There was something else that you asked me. I think I only answered 2 of your 3 questions, so I apologize if I didn't take fast enough notes.
No, that's okay. I had asked where's the accountability when people say use your discretion, so that people can always say, yes, Leslie, people can always say, well, we use our discretion, but how far is it when you're going from using your discretion to using it to outright deny people? So basically you pretty much answered that.
Yeah, the only other thing that you brought up that makes a lot of sense is that there's just not enough housing, generally speaking. Like we do have a supply problem. And so investing specifically in affordable housing for people, and not affordable housing as the city of Atlanta defines it, that's still pretty high in terms of the income targets they have, but really targeting people under 50% of the area median income or under 30% of the area median income to make sure that we had affordable housing on those levels. That should be a priority of everyone who's interested in making sure that we don't have homeless folks, and who want to make sure that we have reasonable policies for making sure that families have stability in our state. Okay.
Well, thank you so much. People experiencing homelessness are more likely to report having a criminal record than the general public. In addition, those who have experienced homelessness are overrepresented among those incarcerated in prisons or jails. Homelessness can be both a cause and a consequence of having a criminal record, such as loitering, sitting, lying down, or sleeping in public. One study found that the first 30 days after release from prison or jail was when people were most likely to experience homelessness. Not only are people leaving jails and prisons at risk of homelessness, they are also more likely to be homeless for long periods of time. And having a criminal record does not, and to be honest with you, having a criminal record, research has shown that having a criminal record does not impact someone's ability to pay your bills and stay housed. And as someone who has firsthand knowledge of this, who has been impacted by a record as well as being homeless due to a felony, and has experienced homelessness and unstable housing due to a felony, I can tell you that once we're given the opportunities to work and make money, we will pay bills if given the opportunity for housing. So Sharon, can you tell us in about 7 minutes about your challenges with finding housing and how it has led to your advocacy today?
Sure can. Thank you for asking that question. I was convicted in 1993 with a 15-year prison term, but I got out within 2 years. So in 95, upon my release, I went home to my family. My mother, I paroled to her home. She bought a home in Stone Mountain. I was convicted in Gwinnett County. So I had to report, on my probation end of my sentence to Gwinnett, but parole was right across the street where I found housing 7 months after I was released. So fast forwarding, 3 years ago, at the age of 62, I encountered housing discrimination going into a subsidized housing that was once a place where I was employed as the on-site emergency after-hour maintenance person. During the day I worked doing, maintenance work in the apartment building where it was 55 and older, and also a multifamily unit, which was 6 blocks around the corner. This was in Midtown. So at the age of 62, I applied to move into the building. It had been renovated, and a private development company along with the Housing Authority, came into some kind of partnership. And I applied and was denied not once, but twice, based on my background, which was 26 years past from my release. So I sought out assistance through Georgia Justice Project and also the Atlanta Legal Aid. They assisted me to where I got a hearing after the first time I was denied. So I had to produce what I've done in those 26 years to rehabilitate myself and my employment history and all those type of things, which I did. And then I didn't hear back from them for a while. They gave me 3 weeks to get it together and I did it, no problem. So then finally we heard back from them. I got denied again after having the opportunity to tell my story, because that particular conviction I got that sent me to prison, I was wrongfully convicted, appealed and lost the appeal, denied the appeal. So the NAACP Legal Defense Fund became my co-counselor, thanks to Georgia Justice Project advocating on my behalf and bringing us together. I worked with the attorneys there to put on Know Your Rights forms. And from them coming aboard, I finally got through to the management company and they offered me housing. So I've been there a little bit over the year, but their main concern was, and you touched on it earlier a while, Lisa, about they feel like a person with a background is a threat to the safety of the tenants and the community if we are accepted to live on their property. It was interesting because after I signed on and I moved in, they were like, give her an apartment immediately, because I think they felt threatened that the next step might have been litigation. But we had an opportunity to change some of the policies and how they looked at people with backgrounds, besides just giving me a place to live. But in that 1 year's time since I've been there, I just renewed my lease as of June, the last week of June. My apartment has been entered unlawfully like 9 times. I have a stalker, and this is real. And it's just ironic that they were concerned about me being a person that would create havoc. And I've explained this to them. Somebody knows how to enter those units that they've broken into, but I had the locks changed by the property management, all that. But I'm feeling unsafe because I have to sleep with a chair under the handle at night, under the door handle. So I'm having a conversation with them. But this has been a big deal. So it got me, spearheaded into developing a group. I started a survey. I'm trying to pull formerly incarcerated people together. But prior to the COVID coming in, I took to the streets and surveying people at random on the streets and at engagements that were in person, like at the Justice Day, Georgia Justice Day. And I gathered at that time 50 surveys. And what the common thing I found that out of those 50 surveys, the people that were impacted with homelessness, because that was a question there, were all formerly incarcerated. Or their family had to move out when they moved in because they wouldn't allow them to stay with them. So the whole family became homeless. And so I'm doing the movement is called Fair Housing Action Network. So I'm going to continue now that the COVID has uplifted, and I'm back out there, boots to the ground, engaging in various communities, canvassing around voters registration and different things to really build this campaign to just really address and participatory research, like what is really the problem and how can we come up with solutions and legislation that would hold people accountable for what the federal guidelines state. Our state guidelines and city is two different things. The city of Atlanta said no more discrimination against people with housing vouchers. But is anybody following up on there? Is there any accountability in place? I say no. The other part of the issue with housing is not that affordable housing. Like the gentleman said, it is a lack of affordable housing, but I see so many empty buildings and schools that have been shut down way prior to the COVID that we're still paying tax dollars on. And those schools in the neighborhoods can be turned into some housing, and it could be turned into affordable housing. And, I think these are some conversations that should be held, and maybe talk to people that are impacted by it, because we do have ideas and we do have solutions because we're impacted by it. I've been three times homeless in my life. I just think we should have more conversations around solutions and just really gather with what is wrong with the systems that are in place.
Yeah.
Folks go to Gateway, they're in line at 6 o'clock in the morning. They only take 12 people in. I stood in line with some homeless veterans trying to get them housing. 6 o'clock in the morning, 12 people, the rest are just there. That's it. I don't think that's right. You got people coming out there in need, and you're only taking 12 people to assist them, and you're open for 8 hours. There's something wrong with that. So that's my opinion about,
Well, thank you, Sharon. I really appreciate your passion, your commitment to this. And like you said, this is definitely a conversation for another day and another time. And like you said, there is opportunities. I'm from Columbus, and Columbus does it as well. There are old schools that are overgrown. A lot of the old Head Start centers that are there, whether it's an old hospital, abandoned buildings, they could be using it for something. And I tell people, I think a lot of times it's intentional because there is no profit in people being housed. And people say, oh, that's wrong, you're being mean. To me, it's like mass incarceration. For instance, a lot of people right now, it's partly because we have the wrong people that's working in these social service agencies. They're just there for a check. So when you have people who are working with individuals who are homeless, I've seen it time again. When I lived at the Salvation Army, I was homeless. I have even been told that when I was actually assisting individuals in the shelter about trying to get jobs, I would literally be scolded because I was only there to teach them how to, do job readiness. I wasn't there to teach them really to get a job. And then when some of those individuals that I was helping get jobs would come back and say, okay, Ms. Wilson, I saved my money, show me how to get an apartment. And I was helping them actually get apartments, moving out of the shelter, moving out of those little transitional livings. I was actually getting flack from that. And that's partly because of greed and profit, because people feel, oh my God, just like they're running around about the jails, that if you close jails, people are going to lose their jobs. So if you're working at a homeless shelter and 100% of those folks get housing, people are worried about their jobs. And I think they're forgetting the whole purpose to me of social work is to work yourself out of a job. You should want to work to get people off food stamps. You should want to work that people are no longer homeless. You should want to work and don't consider yourself now. You may be a homeless services counselor, but working in a position where you help people get housing. Now you may not be a homeless services counselor. Now you are after service counselor, or something that is helping them on their way to help them maintain. But people look at us the sense of fear and just grasping about what's going on, and they're just sometimes the society needs people to be homeless in order to make themselves feel better, like they're doing something. Because having people standing out for 8 hours and you only taking 12 people, that's just ridiculous. Just to show that you got a line full of people standing in your line so they can get some food, and it's just awful. But I appreciate it, and we're going to have that conversation another time. Okay, the next question is going to go to Brendan. This was question 2 on my list. In recent years, and Sharon mentioned it too about families. Let me go back up here. Sharon mentioned it about the issue of housing and stuff for families. But where's my question, Alicia? And having a criminal record is already harder for someone with a felony, but it's especially and extremely hard for individuals who are on the sex offender registry. And I will find that there are some policies that will call people and they'll say, yeah, we take people with registry, but they can only stay here 90 days because they have to have a job within 90 days. Common sense should tell you that if it's hard, and it may take a year to find a job with a felony, just imagine how hard it could be to find a job when you're on the registry. So a lot of the policies and things that are not in place for individuals that stand in some places. But my question to you, Brandon, is in recent years, we've seen Georgians proclaim to love the kids. They love the kids so much that they've created all this legislation to protect children by supporting legislation that was either anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, but these supporters apparently support children being homeless. And why do I say they support children being homeless? Because they don't speak against policies that outright deny and exclude housing for individuals with felony convictions, as well as those who are on the sex offender registry, because we have children as well. And so when you deny a mom and dad housing, whether they're on the registry or not, you also deny their children housing. Can you tell us a little bit about how this is impacting Georgians with criminal convictions who are also on the registry as well?
Yeah, great question, Walisha. Thank you for the opportunity. Just because you are on the registry doesn't mean you can't be around your own children. So many people on the registry have children of their own, or they've married into a family with children. Being on probation is a different story. There are probation conditions that restrict people from being around children. But once you're off probation, the registry law itself does not have anything precluding someone to be around their own children. So it's a normal family like any other family, except for there are certain living conditions that are in the law that registrants have to deal with. Namely, the can't live within 1,000 feet of certain precluded areas. Those are churches, schools, daycares. It's almost on every corner. But the really glaring one that prevents people from finding gainful housing is swimming pools. And that could include private swimming pools that are in neighborhood associations. So if your neighborhood has a swimming pool that's only open to the neighborhood with card key access and everything, that still is considered a prohibited zone. You can't live within 1,000 feet of that. But where it really impacts people is apartment complexes. When's the last time you saw an apartment complex that didn't have a pool? Most of them do have swimming pools, and the ones that don't have swimming pools are not the kind of places that you're going to want to live at. They are going to be, kind of in destitute areas. There's not a whole lot of options for people to live not around a swimming pool when it comes to renting. So that's going to marginalize families that now you're going to have to maybe rent a home or purchase a home. Maybe you can't afford to do that. So where do you live? It's going to be an extended stay motel type of situation for a lot of families on the registry.
Okay, so just to ask you again, what are some of the, so how does that actually impact? And I'm hoping we had a question, and I'm kind of gonna work this question in. And if there's, and we may have to get it at the Q&A, but what are they doing in other cities and other locations to assist with making housing more accessible for individuals on the registry? I know in one of our board meetings, I'm a board member of Restore Georgia. And I know you were talking about other cities who, instead of using 1,000 feet rule, they use 2,000 feet rule, or they do different types of things. What are some of the cities that you would like to do a special shout out with how they're actually doing, and they're doing it right, and Georgia probably could lead in that?
So our representative, Mandy Ballinger, introduced legislation 2 years ago that would reduce the restrictions to 300 feet. Right now, it's 1,000 feet from property line to property line. So you could effectively be over the river and through the woods from a school, but still you are property line to property line. There's no way you could traverse that and get there on foot within 1,000 feet, but the property line touches. This bill that Mandy Ballinger introduced 2 years ago that kind of just didn't go anywhere would reduce it to 300 feet from door to door. So it's actually from the door of the business to the door of your home would have to be 300 feet. And that would open up a lot of places for people to live that aren't currently there. I'm going to paste in the chat a link to the crime report, which it's talking about different states and the different measures they've passed in their states. New Jersey has just passed a Fair Chance Housing Act. It was signed into law by the governor on Juneteenth of this year, and it bans the box. It makes where there's no box on the housing application. Now, there is a chance for the landlord, the person renting, to go back and look at your criminal record and deny you after the fact. But it does ban the box, so at least you can get that chance to tell your story. Really interesting, California has made it illegal for a criminal background check to go back more than 7 years. So for their Fair Credit Reporting Act, they've extended it to criminal record checks cannot go back more than 7 years. So that would open up a lot more people that the 20-year, 30-year past their crime, they could now, as long as they're 7 years clean from their conviction date, they would be eligible in California. So I'd like to see Georgia enact Mandy Ballinger's bill that she introduced 2 years ago. I'd like to see the ban the box, and I'd also like to see ban any criminal record over 7 years from being considered in any application.
Well, thank you. And I actually think it should be just like that. You have stuff that fall off your credit report after 7 years. I think they just need to make everything universal, fall off your credit report, fall off your background, your evictions, all that should just fall off after 7 years. Thank you so much, Brenda. And I also dropped in the chat this Thursday on the 22nd, we are having a fearless group at Restore Georgia. And what that is, that's for only individuals who are on the registry and their families. Law enforcement, probation officers, therapists, none of those folks are allowed to come into the meeting. It is not recorded. It is the 4th Thursday of every month, right, Brenda,
That's
at 6:30?
Yes.
And I dropped the link in the chat. So if you're on the registry or have a loved one that is, please definitely sign up and join us for those meetings. So the next question we're going to ask is, Patricia, as a housing provider, I would like to thank you first for your boldness in supporting those returning home and providing housing with us knowing at least one person with a criminal record, and the guarantee that over 94% are automatically going to be returned home anyway. Why do you feel that there is this not in my backyard mentality? And then tell us about your program and if you have any openings and how somebody would apply.
Well, thank you, Ms. Wilson, for having me, and thank you, everyone, for joining, and thank you to panelists. We started this program because I used to volunteer at Midtown Assistance, and I saw a young lady across the desk, and I asked her why she was explaining that she couldn't get housing. And I asked her why. She said for her criminal background. So, it was a thought for me. I'm always thinking. So I decided to open up housing. It took me 8 months to find apartment complex that would accept people that had challenging backgrounds. So you could see if it took me that long, you can see it's going to take somebody longer who's doing an individual. And so we used to work with women. We don't work with women anymore. We strictly work with men that are coming straight out the penal system. And we also do wraparound services for them. And you can actually stay in the program for 1 year. Now, we are on the Department of Corrections website, Thor, and we are part of RPH, Reentry Partnership Housing. And we've been around for 10 years. And so what I wanted to do is when they came home, I wanted a place to call home so they can land and give them the services. It's a passion for me. My mother used to be a parole officer, so in the Bronx. So it is a passion for me to see her have the heart when people come home, no matter what the crime was. And so it's a passion for me for people who are coming home and they don't have a place to call home. And for me to give them that home and give them that foundation and be the vessel for them to give that second chance in life, that says something to me and says something to my participants, and the success stories of seeing someone coming through your door and then someone leaving, they're not the same person. And we do take people with violent crimes. We just don't take people with sex offenders. So we do take the lifers, we do take, the murderers, the armed robbery, everyone. And we have to thank the apartment complex that gave us that second chance to open up our housing. We've been there 8 years. It has been challenging. You know, when people come home, it is challenging. You know, there's, you know, you are dealing with different personalities. They're unique. They have trauma coming to them, mental health coming to them, substance addiction. So we have dealt with it for the last 10 years, but we're still here and we're still standing. And we have to thank the village, because it is the people in the community that have embraced our program. So without that community, we wouldn't be here this long. It takes a community to bring this to the forefront, to help people that have been forgotten, because people have forgotten them. And in some way, shape, or form, we have restored that to be successful. And I'm so glad that the men and women have came through the program, and I can see them 2 years from now, 3 years, 6 months from now. Hey, Ms. Bennett, I got it. Or see them in the grocery store at Walmart, or just saying, thank you, you saved my life. That brings tears, that brings happiness, and it brings to keep moving. With the women, I had no services. So I had to learn to go out in the community. And the community has restored empowering men and women. So we just wanted to thank everyone and continue to open your doors up. Now we're trying to find, our biggest hurdle is finding permanent housing. Yes, we got the 1-year housing for you. Now it's trying to find permanent housing.
Well, I appreciate you. And I know you said that you don't work with individuals on the registry, and I take it that's because you're in an apartment complex.
Yes, we are.
But I just want to go ahead and put that soul nugget in you that God gonna bless you with the opportunity to be able to get a whole bunch of more houses, and that will be in compliant for folks who are also on the registry, because there is a real strong need for folks. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, a lot of people fail to realize that there are a lot of women on Georgia's sex offender registry. And before we get off, I can't get off before we go ahead and let Georgia Justice Project get on. She has a quick presentation she wanted to present, but I get that a lot where people say, how is it that you advocate for folks on the registry? Because I feel that when you say you're working for individuals with criminal records, you advocate for individuals with criminal records, period. It ain't non-violent, it's not violent, it's not charges of this, it's not charges of that. We're all in the same boat. You serve state prison, you was in Fed prison, I served 1 month, you served 100 years. It's the same thing. We're all having the same challenges. You going somewhere saying that, oh, I only did a month in state prison, gonna get you locked out of housing like somebody that did 30 years in Fed time. So it's all the same for me. And so I want people to understand, particularly those who are on this line who are housing providers, when it comes to folks on the sex offender registry, just like when people inaccurately assume that because a person has a felony in fraud, automatically you assume that person's a thief. But you fail to realize to ask them what happened. And had you asked them what happened, they probably would have said, I had an overpayment of food stamps. And for 2 months, I was out of a job. I had 6 children. So yeah, I didn't report that they gave me an extra $500 in food stamps. Who wouldn't? But they put it on there like it's fraud, like you went somewhere and deliberately deceived somebody. So it's the same thing with individuals on the registry. Yes, we have people who've done things who've harmed children, but not everybody on the sex offender registry has actually sexually offended. I have a lady who's calling right now who has been having a very difficult time trying to find a job. She cannot get a job because she chose to go in her backyard. My phone is going off, my alarm, excuse me, y'all. She went into her backyard. I guess that's what you white folk call it, sunbathing. She didn't have a top on. She went in her backyard. She has those 9-foot wooden privacy fences. She did what she felt like she should have been able to do in her backyard, right? Well, next door to her, the house has 3 levels. And the little boy, who's about 9, plays up in the attic. Well, he can look down in the window at her. And he saw her there, topless. This lady's been placed on the registry for 15 years. I have a guy who, drunk when he was 21, 22, decides to get drunk, run across the football field. That's what you do. You're idiots when you're in college. You get drunk, you run across the football game, you start streaking. He's on the sex offender registry for 20 years because there are children in the audience. We've had people who decided to get out in the middle of the road to pee in the middle of the night. They decide to go up in a little ditch and try to use the bathroom, not realizing that right over that fence is a daycare. But who cares whether it's a daycare or not at 2:30 in the morning when you're traveling to Florida on I-95? Why would anybody tell you, because you're urinating at a fence and you're less than 1,000 feet from a daycare at 2:30 in the morning. There ain't no children on the playground at 2:30 in the morning. This man has been placed on the registry. So people need to understand that not everyone, you know, when you hear somebody say they're on the registry, they start clutching their children. They start wanting to do this. Not everybody on the registry wants your child, just like not every gay person wants you. So people have to understand that people need to be more cognizant of what they're doing and opening an engagement to say, look, can you tell me why you're on the registry? Can you explain your charges? If you allow that, a person may actually say, well, be honest with you, I was 18. I took my 15-year-old girlfriend to the prom 33 years ago. We're still married and we have 4 kids. Why is this person even on the registry? He shouldn't even be on the registry. Because, I see you, Patricia, because people assume that because you're on the registry, you're a threat. So this is where this whole, I don't want that in my backyard mentality come from. I don't want a sex offender in my backyard. Not realizing that over 70% of children who are molested, they're done by somebody they know. Me, it was a pastor in church. Me, it was a family friend, school, daycare worker, probably somebody you willingly allow your child to go with every day anyway. So I just want people to just open their eyes about the fact that there's their fear, their ignorance, and some of their ways, what they're doing, you're causing more harm than not, because you fail to realize that people, everybody deserves somewhere to stay. There is dignity in housing. Just like there's dignity in going to get a fresh haircut and getting your teeth done, there's dignity in having a place to stay and call your own. And when you deny that for anybody, it's not right. To me, that's what you call un-American. To me, it's having veterans out here who are homeless. That's un-American. To me, it is making a person serve 10, 20 years or even a year in prison. They've served their time and they get out here and they still have to serve another life sentence of homelessness and unemployment. So these are things that I want people to understand, that we should not be lumped into some box, or because they got a felony, they're going to cause more harm to our tenants and things. We deserve housing. Patricia, we'll go ahead with your comment, and then we're going to go ahead and let Brenda do hers.
I just want to say one thing. I'm going to say most of us want to open up housing for the people on the registry. Ms. Wilson, I've been trying for 2 years, and I'm just going to put it out there. I've been trying for 2 years.
You know, a lot of times the cities actually block folks that's trying to do it.
And it's, you know, if you open it up, you only can have 2 people. I called all the way upstairs and we had a meeting, 2 people. Now, if you want to go through the Department of Corrections and all that, you zone. How do you go to zone and present it and say, hey, I want to open up a sex offender housing in your area? You know you're going to be shut down. So where do we go from there? I think most of us are open to it now after we got our classes and, you know, we talked about it. We're open to open up housing, but no one has come to say, hey, maybe Douglas County will be all right. Maybe Gwinnett County you can go into. Atlanta, different story. You know, there's a church on every block. So let's even take that off. Let's take Fulton out. Let's take Fulton out the equation. Where do we start it? Everybody always say, oh, go here, but ain't nobody showing you nothing. So when somebody talk about, oh, I need you to open up SO housing, because I know I can do it well. I do housing well. I think the community, once you bring the community, you have to bring the community in. You just can't shun them and say, we're going to open up something in your neighborhood. You have to bring them in and why you're going to do it. But if you don't show me and say, hey, this county will be embracing you, we can talk this all day long to next year, 5 years from now, we'll be sitting right on the same Zoom or be in a conference saying the same thing. People, every day we get calls of people. Little old lady called me today. I don't know. We got 6 people, 6 housing providers. Look how big Georgia, 6 housing providers. And they're the ones that did the zoning. That's
sad.
That's
and
sad.
there are actually folks right now in prison who've already been maxed out of their time.
We
Just
get that
imagine
every
somebody
day.
saying, Patricia, you know, your release date is June 1st, and here it is December, and you're still in prison. They're basically kidnapping you, and you're being held there because you have nowhere to go.
And we get them calls every day from the counselors. That's the biggest thing. They're looking for housing. And can I be their savior? No one has told me what county. Fulton County, like I said, take it out the equation.
Yeah.
What other county's gonna say, hey, if somebody can call me, I'm willing to open it up. I don't
Well, I'm
have
gonna
a
have a talk with you because I'm looking to do some housing myself as well. And so you and I get together because I found a few places and we're gonna get together.
Okay.
All righty. So now for Brenda Smeeton.
Hey, Alicia, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and just skip the brief PowerPoint I had in the interest of time. So we have.
Yeah, that's all the question was. We just hear about people saying about they couldn't get in because they have felonies. So we just wanted you to give us a little update on the recent laws that can may help some people.
Sure. So Georgia Justice Project has been working on housing as long as we've been working on criminal records issues. When we started this about 15 years ago, housing was at the center of our work when some of the housing projects in Atlanta were being closed down and nonprofit groups and foundations were working to get people vouchers and they couldn't get vouchers because of their criminal records. So that's when we really got engaged in criminal records work. But housing has always been an incredibly challenging issue for us. I would say we've had success on two levels. One in more local policies, working on a individual with an individual housing provider. Ms. Turner talked about our experience working with her housing provider, which since you called out the ones that aren't doing it right, I'm going to go ahead and call out one that did it right, which is Columbia Residential, and they operate thousands of units across the metro area. And particularly once the NAACP Legal Defense Fund got involved and there was the threat of litigation, they engaged in a conversation with us, and it was this long process of redoing their criminal background screening process. And they came up ultimately with a really good policy that they worked with us on and with the Legal Defense Fund. So they're an example. I think a lot of housing providers just have never thought about this issue. They just do things the way that they've always done. And Wingo mentioned, under the Fair Housing Act, in 2016 had released guidance about how criminal records were supposed to be considered in housing, and you have to do this individualized assessment, considering rehabilitation and how long ago it was. I think a lot of us that do that work have been really disappointed in how ineffectual that guidance was. It was passed in 2016. A new presidential administration came in, which didn't enforce it at all. There was actually some fear that they would withdraw it. We have heard from federal partners that enforcement, hopefully we can look to stepped up enforcement coming down the line, and that would be really great. But right now, in the absence of that, it has been engaging in individual conversations with housing providers and localities. We've done some work around crime-free housing programs, which is a partnership sometimes with law enforcement and housing providers. And I don't know if she's still here, but I know Nancy DeVetter from Savannah was on the line, and she worked on ending the program in Savannah. And we followed her lead and worked on ending some of those other programs that were still lingering around the state. So, but the most success we've had is on changing the law about what people can actually clear off their criminal record, because the best way to not have to deal with it with a potential landlord is for the potential landlord to just not see it on your record at all. So SB 288 is the biggest win that we've had on this front, and we still have a long ways to go. It's not going to help people who are coming freshly out of prison. It's not going to help people whose criminal record is more recent, but it is some hope on down the line. And we've had people who are denied housing based on something that is 30, 35 years old. We have a lot of older clients who go for senior housing and then can't get in because of their criminal record. So SB 288 passed last year. What does it do? Up until this January 1st of 2021, when it went into effect, you couldn't really get hardly any convictions expunged from your record. It's not really called expungement in Georgia, it's called restriction and sealing, but basically it's the same process. You could get non-convictions off. If you were convicted of certain misdemeanors before you turned 21, you might be able to get them off. But as of this January, that's changed. For misdemeanor convictions, it is a process where you have to submit something to the court and the judge decides, but you can potentially get up to 2 misdemeanor convictions off of your record. And when I say 2 misdemeanor convictions, I mean incidents. So if you've got multiple misdemeanor charges in one incident, that just counts as one incident. So up to 2 misdemeanor incidents where you were convicted, there are some exceptions. You might be able to get those off. You can apply to the court 4 years after you're off paper. And then on the felony front, which is where we hope to continue to make a lot of progress, if you received a pardon, which a pardon is something you can apply for from the State Board of Pardons and Paroles 5 years after you're off paper. If you have received a pardon, as soon as you receive it, you can petition the court to expunge the record of your conviction. So it does not appear on your record, and it's not going to appear on private background check anymore. So there are exclusions. You can get a pardon potentially for anything, but if you get a pardon and it was for a serious violent offense, the offenses that we kind of commonly call the 7 deadlies, or if it was for a serious sex offense, then you're not able to expunge it. But all other felony convictions, there's not a limit on the number. If you get a pardon, you can potentially clear it from your record. So we've got a lot more options now on what you can do to clear up your criminal record. Also, folks should be aware of another law that passed last year that it's called the Survivors First Act, and it allows people who are survivors of sex and labor trafficking to potentially even vacate their conviction, so it's no longer a conviction on their record, and that's for both misdemeanors and felonies. So I know that was very quick, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but you can go to our website, gjp.org, and learn more, and also learn about how to apply for our services.
Thank you so much, Brenda. Wow, thank you all for such great and informative information. Before we go to Q&A, feel free to chime in if you like what attendees on the call can do to make some things more equitable for impacted people, and I'll just go ahead and make it quicker. I did drop some resources in the chat about some advocacy tools on supporting fair child housing, introducing fair chance housing policies. Also, you can, Andrea, or you're probably better to do it, Brenda, you jump in, support the Georgia, well, now we're just the Justice Reform Partnership, and also a Go to Justice Day event in February. And that is where we have Justice Day at the Capitol. We get to engage with legislators. And a lot of times people who are making these laws are people who've never been impacted by poverty and homelessness and housing inequity. So it's really good that there are faces there to see the people that they're impacting. And a lot of times, I've had the pleasure of going to Justice Day speaker a couple of times, and you'd be amazed that you're actually sitting next to someone who writes bills and laws, and they conversate with you just like you've been knowing each other for a long time. Why don't you come over to my house? We'll enjoy ourselves, and we'll have this and we'll have that. Only for them to say, our next person we're going to announce, they got to serve 30 years in prison for killing somebody, and then they look at your eyes like, I was sitting here for 30 minutes. It's just the fact of knowing that they've sat and had this humane conversation with a person. You've now probably changed their entire perspective on what they are used to people who have records have to get up and impact their story. And we've gone to Justice Day before, and I've seen speakers get up there and tell their stories, and people will write, there'll be legislators in the room right now saying, I'm ready to support their partner, I'm ready to support whatever it is that they got going on, and they'll leave out of there. I think it was last year, the year before last, an older lady got up and talked about how her record was 30 years older or something. And before she left there, she had already had a connection with getting her record clear. So it's just a great opportunity to connect with legislators. Don't forget to check your county and city housing rules. Yes, Leslie. So right now we have a question. Nancy the veteran, is Nancy on the line? I hope she is, because I would like, if Nancy's on the line, Nancy, can you unmute yourself if you're still here? Because we have a question that did come in. And I want to make sure that that person is on the call as well, but did not.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So the question that we got, they had wanted to direct it to Brendan, and I told him that hopefully you'd be on the line. It says, I hope somebody can answer me with my question. What are the options for those of us on the registry who are denied rental housing, but are also not eligible for any type of expungement or criminal record correction? Is buying the only option? Is getting married the only option? Me and my fiance are currently living apart because of Georgia's laws, so I only get to see her and my kids on the weekend. We are spending almost $5,000 a month on 2 different residencies. She's in the house and I am in a hotel. We want to buy, but can only do rent to own right now. And only her name, ooh, this sounds familiar, and only her name will be on the loan application and the deed. If the PO, my PO has approved it and says that I am compliant, but now I'm afraid to move in because I'm wondering what the neighbors might do. If she's purchasing a rent to home, we're purchasing this together, but her name is on all the paperwork in the deed. My PO has said it's compliant. If it goes public, you know, with the registry, your name is public. I guess he's concerned that if the neighbors see that my name is on the registry, can the neighbors rent me out of the neighborhood? Make me move later. I just want to live with my family under the same roof. FYI, for those of you who think that I deserve to be homeless or living in a hotel because I'm on the registry, think again. My charge was statutory rape. I was 18 and my prom date and my girlfriend was 15. It's 30 years later and we're still married with 4 kids. I'm no threat to kids whatsoever. Georgia's residency laws do more harm than good, especially to my kids. So what are the options when you can't rent? Should they get by? Do they have to get married? Because he sounds like he'll marry her if it'll not make him get put out.
I mean, just from the facts of this case, I turned off my video because I think my internet connection isn't great and I didn't want it to be too scratchy. But it's, you know, statutory rape is, you know, where the 2 couples where it was a consensual act is one of the paths to be that is allows you to be removed from the registry. So that'd be the first thing that I would check, is to make sure that this person is not eligible to be removed from the registry, because from what this person is saying, I would think that that's a possibility.
Okay.
The other option would be to specifically file a motion in your case to be relieved from certain parts of the registry. You know, for example, this is a house where I've lived with my partner this is where my partner lives, and to see if the specific prohibition from that particular property might be able to be addressed by a court to be removed. So, you know, as far as your neighbors running you off, you know, your neighbors are not allowed to evict you, or they don't have a say in denying you housing. Of course, the social stigma is very powerful, and, you know, people can embarrass people and affect them, even if they can't legally make them leave. So it sounds like this person may have options, and I would encourage them to talk to an attorney to see if that's a path they could pursue.
Okay, because I've heard in some circles where people have said, long as you're renting, people can make you leave whether you're on the registry or not. I mean, I've heard some awful stories of people actually buying a house. They're married, buying a house, and they're on a whole acre of land by themselves, and someone who wants to start a school or a daycare will move right next door to them. And guess what? They make that man and his family move, as opposed to making the person who's getting it should be their due diligence to not be able to move there. So that gets expensive. People don't take that kind of consideration, that folks are spending money on 2 households. How is this impacting the children? You know, that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to find out, and I'm glad you were on the call to answer.
And there is a specific provision that says if you are in X place and someone moves close to you that would make you non-compliant, that you're grandfathered in. I can't remember off the top of my head if that's only for employment or if that's for housing too. Maybe Brendan or Brenda can speak on that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Brendan, did you want to have him chime in?
Sure, that's an excellent point about removal from the registry. As soon as you're off of probation, you're eligible to get removed from the registry as long as you're a level 1. And most people in Georgia have not been classified, have not been leveled, but you can still go and petition and get yourself leveled. A statutory rape case more than likely would be classified as a level 1. Everyone else has to wait 10 years after the completion of their sentence, but that's probably the best way. Another thing is the fear of the neighbors running you off because they find out your status. Something unique to people on the registry is that it is a crime to harass someone based on the registry information. So if you do look someone up on the registry and you use that information to harass them, that is a felony offense. So that's kind of unique to people on the registry there.
Well, thank you so very much, Brenda. This question goes to whoever's working in housing, so maybe it's be one of the attorneys. She says, I'm a manager at an apartment complex, and I see deserving people come in all the time to apply. If it were up to me, I would give them an apartment because they were working, sometimes making more than 3 times the rent, but we have to turn them away because of corporate policies. What can I do to try and encourage corporate to consider people with criminal convictions? It is especially sad when they have children, because when we turn the mom and dad away, we also have to turn the kids away. What can we do as landlords to protect? But I guess she's trying to work up on what she's gonna do. Second part of the question, what can we do as the landlords to protect ourselves in the event that someone is hurt on our property by someone we have rented to that has a felony? So whoever would like to chime in on that, please. But before you chime in, let me say this and ask that person this question. What would you do to protect yourself if a tenant that didn't have a record attacked somebody? I just don't get that. You know, crazy come in all kind of packages. You know, I get that when I hear people say we'll hire anybody as long as they don't have no violent felon. I'm thinking, well, we didn't come out the womb violent. You know, if you piss the wrong person off at the wrong time, they might not have a record, but they might be crazier than Doomberg. You know, so I just don't understand that. But yeah, the same thing you would do with somebody who didn't have a record, who attacked somebody on your property. But if somebody, Brenda, if somebody wanted to chime in on that, she basically wants to know what are some tips to try to encourage corporate unaccepted individuals with properties.
Sure. So on the second part of the question first, on the liability issue, it's not as big of an issue as people think. You know, recoveries in these cases and criminal and civil cases are very rare. Like you said, you know, a person with a criminal record is no more likely to do something on a property than anyone else. Also, I dropped in the chat something I forgot to mention, that I think it was back in 2015, Georgia passed a law that said if you received a pardon, then an employer has liability protection if they rent to you. So I think a lot of housing providers don't know about that. So that's something to increase awareness about. In terms of encouraging housing providers to increase their policy, to improve their policies, I think the important thing is to let them know that they may be violating the Fair Housing Act if they don't have a good policy in place. Like I said, we're hoping that the enforcement of the Fair Housing Act and the HUD guidance is going to be stepped up. Wingo may have more to say about this than I do. We're hoping to plan an event where we can have some housing providers who have done the right thing and have changed their policies successfully can speak, because I think it's most important. It's most helpful when they hear from somebody that's doing the same work that they're doing and that they've had success changing their policy. So we'll try to keep, we'll certainly post about that when we're able to make it happen. Okay. But I don't know, Wingo, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't know that I have much more to add to that. I mean, I've talked to a lot of folks who do the property, who do torts for crimes on properties. And it's not usually about whether or not someone had a criminal record. It's about whether there were past events of violence that occurred such that you could know reasonably that they could reoccur at some point in the future. And that's not the case with this, you know, someone who comes onto your property for, you know, this is not the same sort of scenario.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Wingo, because when you say that, people look at stuff with the indication of something may happen in the future, but somebody just messaged me privately. This happened 30 years ago. So how much more time do you need as an indication that's going to happen? He says, I hate that there are not federal laws that protect people with criminal records as a protected class. It should be illegal that when I call apartment supply and they outright tell me that I cannot have a felony to live there without even asking me how old it is or what it was for. Why do they assume that because I have a felony that I can't pay my rent? I'm a veteran, I'm employed, I make almost $8,000 a month. I paid my debt to society, and me and my children should not have to continue to be punished for something that happened almost 30 years ago, and it should be illegal. So that's why I was, you know, it's weird that you said something about that. How much time are you needing? I mean, prison is supposed to be the punishment. People have done their time, you know. So when you say we just need a little record of what they're doing to see if they're not going to be, you know, precluded to any more violence. Well, hell, it's been 30 years and they ain't been arrested again. How much more time do you need to do 30 more years?
Yeah, I mean, and if there are property managers out there who are experiencing that problem or having difficulty sort of going through the channel up the channel and are feeling like that they would like to provide that information maybe without disclosing who they are necessarily, so that people can talk more from the outside with the property management, you know, that's something that someone could consider as well. Trying to sort of leak that information around so that way that people can have those conversations reasonably with corporate to try and get them to understand that they need to change their policies to be in compliance with the Fair Housing Act.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I think we have a time for a couple of questions before we end. Mr. Gomez, if he's on the phone line and he wants to just say something 1 minute quickly, and maybe he can get the information, we can do that, because I know he did email us for our help. And I wanted to see if he felt comfortable. If not, we'll move on and let somebody else answer.
Well, thank you. I've been listening to everybody, and I appreciate all of the information that's been provided. And my mind and my brain just keeps going to, I was illegally evicted from my home. I was living with a family member. He gave me an opportunity for about 3 months. I was living there. But unfortunately, there was disagreement with a job that I had decided to disengage from. And he just said, hey, it was a friend of his, and he said, you got to get out the house. And the same day it got out, which put me in a bad position because I had to live in my car, and living in my car made me have blood clots. And that's why I'm in this situation now, unfortunately.
So are you wanting to connect with someone on the line who probably can help you out where you can get off the line?
Yes, I wanted somebody to either contact I can give my contact information or my my email information, and you can contact me and help me out on who I can contact and what I can do from here.
All right. And I think I don't know if there's anybody on the line, but I think there was some people who actually registered, and I'll make it a point to get your information to them, Mr. Gomez. I just dropped it before we get to the next question. I did just drop in the chat. Next Thursday, not this Thursday coming up, but the Thursday after, is going to be closing out Reentry Awareness Month, and we're having our last conversation on faith community's role in reentry. And some of the topics we're going to be talking about is why having a jail and prison ministry is not enough. We're going to talk about churches that actually do background checks and put people out of the church and ban them from coming to church because of their background record. Those of you who are bucking your eyes, it happens. We're going to talk about how to address concerns about worshipers. People have concerns about worshipers who are on the sex offender registry. And we're going to talk about seeking resolutions for effective spiritual reintegration without having to worry about somebody's record. So if you can join us for that, please do that. And we have time for one question before we close.
I have a question.
All right.
My name is James Whitehead, and I want to say thank you for hosting this meeting. And I'm myself, I don't serve time as well. But I was wondering if it's possible to maybe get entertainers in the Atlanta area or something like that to maybe buy some property to rent to people, not just people with backgrounds, but just people in general that won't discriminate against, because you mentioned about how some people are so afraid that it's job security and things of that nature. Well, maybe if we can make it appealing to perhaps individuals who have surplus cash to invest in some of those old schools you were talking about that's growing over. Maybe if somebody can show them hey, you got fans, people who done brought your music and things of that nature. I know the Outcasts, they're a big advocate to be showing out for people that's incarcerated and things of that nature. They speak out. What are the chances of something like that happening?
Well,
Lisa, I would like to address that.
Yeah, please chime in, because sometimes you feel like you shouldn't have to ask nobody to do anything. People see what's going on.
T.I. and Killer Mike, they done bought up blocks over in Mechanicsville and Pittsburgh. Have invested in blocks of property. And, they, especially T.I., he's been incarcerated, and he was part of the task force in closure of the jail, ACDC jail. So maybe just see if you can reach out and invite that into a conversation and see what happens. But they have invested in blocks of properties over Mechanicsville and Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So
That's
that
really
is happening.
That's really interesting. The Georgia Indie Mass Incarceration Multi-Faith Initiative to End Mass Incarceration is also working with County and All Crows to also do some work with the music industry and entertainment industry around some of these issues. So I know that NIA and some others are reaching out to both of them. So I'd be curious as to hear, I wonder if we can get them into conversation. That'd be really powerful.
And I did hear on Twitter, you know, that Tyler Perry was buying up some property over in East Point. And of course, you know, you make your efforts to try to get in touch with them and see how they're going to be using that housing, but we hadn't heard anything else about it. Edward, anybody wants to save your chat? There are 3, if you're on your phone, it should be, I don't know how you do if it's on your phone, but I know on your computer, when you actually go to the chat, there should be 3 little dots to the right and it'll say save chat. However, we have tried to screenshot all of the participants so that those who did attend the meeting, we will, y'all, and it's hard because we have volunteers and all of them work very hard jobs. So it may take 5 days, it may take 10, but you're gonna get it. All the resources that we have dropped in the chat. But if you just want it, put it on your mind, say don't forget about me, shoot us an email and we'll make sure that we get those resources to you. But yeah, you don't have to necessarily keep anything. Okay, there it is, I saw it. Tyler Perry and TD Jakes are buying the old Fort McPherson.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
Fort McPherson, there were properties allocated a percentage of that to homeless people.
Yeah.
That's not gonna happen. They're doing that to, you know, profit off of it. That was part of the many years ago before Tyler Perry first got that first allotment of being able to buy.
Yeah.
So, but I want to just give a quick shout out. Anybody can reach out to me. New Georgia Project is hiring canvassers full-time with benefits and part-time at $17 an hour. They don't care about your background. So you can like reach out to me. I put my information in the chat, but my phone number is 442790879, and I'm going to connect you straight to my supervisor. And just give me a call, and they're hiring like ASAP. They need 30 people to get out the vote and do canvassing.
So y'all know what canvassing is, that's walking.
Not all the time. Sometimes we just at the MARTA station, so you're not doing too much walking. We haven't started knocking the doors yet. That's get out the vote. That's when you
okay. Well, ain't there anything over $15 an hour to talk and engage with people is always something good. And I love to hear the words no background check. So if you are, before we close out, we know we're 5 minutes over. If you are a housing provider on this line, or even you're an employee on this line, or you happen to have a record and you're renting from somebody who may have space or another place, or you're an apartment complex and you know they are open to hiring people with records, please, please, please email us as we keep a running list of resources for individuals with criminal records. We receive resources, job openings. We have several job openings now we got to send out by tomorrow that are no background check. They just want you to show up and work. $18, $19, $20 an hour. Housing resources, when we get them in, we send them out twice a week. You just simply need to request to be added to that email list. So if you go out and you happen to say, yeah, we went somewhere or we rented here, please let us know. And that way we can pay it forward by having somebody else be able to apply there, especially with housing, because it's really difficult to try to find housing. Especially, and also if you know of any shelters. We've had several requests for people who they're outside or they got jobs. It's got to be a bad feeling to get up every day to go work a job 8 to 10 hours only to go sleep under a bridge in a tent. I've done it before and it's not good. It doesn't feel good at all. So if you have connections with people who are at a shelter, particularly any shelters that will accept someone on the registry. It is a woman with 3 children. She has a part-time job and a full-time job. And she's paying daycare for her kids. But when she gets off work, she picks her kids up from daycare. and they go sleep in a tent under the bridge. But she cannot get in some shelters because she's on the registry. So if you all have any connections, I'm going to get our video because I'll start crying after a while. If you all have any connections of possible shelter or somebody that I can put this woman in contact with, please let me know. She can't be too bad of a person, huh? She's got custody of her children, right? You know, so it's automatically seeing that she's on the registry and they're telling her no. So whether it's an apartment, and like I said, she has income. She may not have 3 or 4 months worth of rent to save up, but she does have what she's kind of trying to get. So she just actually sent me a text. So if you all have anything, please send it to us in the email that you would send any resources to, or say, Walisha, these people are renting. Can you, if you want to call and check and see, I'll be happy to call. I have no problem confirming. Second chance. I have no problem calling and confirming anything. Andrea, did you want to say anything to close us out? Andrew, to go sleep?
Thanks for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the chat.
Thank you all so very much. You all have been awesome.
Great program, you guys. Thank
you so very much. And like I said, we will send this stuff out. Thank you so very much to our panelists, Sharon Turner, Wingo Smith, Patricia Bennett, Brenda Smeeton, Brenda Spaar. I have some great friends. God has some great favor for me, and I'm glad that he puts me in connection with folks who are willing to volunteer their time for this little bitty small organization called New Life Second Chance Outreach. But I think he knows that I have a good heart and I'm doing it for the right reason. And so I thank you all, and I look forward to seeing you at our future events, and look forward to seeing what we can do to try to help each other, because we are a village. And in order for any of this stuff to change, we definitely need to work together. And when we see something standing out, we do need to ask those type of questions. You know, hey, why are you not allowing somebody with a record? Because don't they deserve housing? Well, you know, everybody deserves housing, especially when they got children, especially when they've gone to war and fought for this country to have freedom, only to get over here and be homeless. It's a problem. And so let's see what we can do to work together and get some action done. I'm not really relatively new to Atlanta, but I think I'm going to take it upon myself, not this month because I'm super busy, but next month to just ride around and see if I can find 10 buildings that have been abandoned and see what I can do to find out about the status of those buildings and what the city plans on doing with those buildings, who has them, whether the school board has them. Because sometimes when school board has properties, whoever gets it has to do something educational purposes with it. But that's still feasible as well. So to see what we can do to get some things working.
Ms. Wilson.
Uh-huh.
One last thing. Is it possible to get a list of attorneys that would help with expungement that's not taxing or work with payment plans?
Well, I don't know if Brenda's still on the line, but I know Georgia Justice Project, their services are free.
Yeah, I called them before, but I never got in touch with anyone.
Okay. Well, we'll see. What did you drop your email in the chat?
Oh, see, I'm visually impaired, Ms. Wilson.
Huh?
I'm
He's visually impaired.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You had to excuse me because I can't hear too good. So we're a perfect match.
Give them your phone number.
Brenda, are you still on the line? Okay.
I think she got off.
I think Brenda's off. Can somebody, because I can't do this one. Can you give me your number and I will call you after I get off this event. Give me about 15 minutes to put something in my stomach, and then I'll call you in about 15 minutes.
All right. Is area code 912?
Maybe if anybody else wants to join me on that call, maybe me and Sharon or somebody that's got time, maybe we can get together and talk. Or when everybody leaves, I have no problem with once everybody leaves this thing, we can stay on here. Once I turn the recording off, we can just stay on here.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay.
912, James, because you had hit me up. What is it? 912?
428-1785.
Cool.
Okay.
And what we're doing Charlotte anyway, that's Savannah number. Do you live here in Atlanta, or you in Savannah? Because that's the Savannah number.
I'm in Savannah.
Okay,
I know Charlotte is in Savannah.
okay.
Charlotte Guns. So we
Oh,
can
yeah,
connect
yes, she
them.
is. Yes, she is. Okay,
Uh-huh, and Harambe. We
okay.
can connect you to some resources there, James.
Yeah, and if you want, what we can do is I got about 15 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and end this thing. I would like to thank you all for joining. If you're formerly incarcerated, if you would like to stay on this line and speak with the other formerly incarcerated folks on the line, please stay on the line. If you ain't formerly incarcerated, that means you got to go.
Wow.
Thank you,
y'all.
everyone. Appreciate your
you.
support.
See, how do I stop this thing?